Okay, today I just wanted to show you how easy it is to install one of our Motec integrated ECU packages into a Renault Megane 3 RS. This is just our test car. We bought it from an insurance company, salvage auction. Not really sure what happened to it. It's missing a few components. That throws a few fault codes, but all the electronics in the car, all the basic stuff that we needed was all intact, which is why we've got it, and that's what we've used to develop our package on. As you can see at the moment, it's got the factory ECU still in there. We have removed the turbo shield, but that's just so that we can put the lambda sensor in it for the Motec system. I'll just show you it starts and it runs. So that's on the factory ECU. You can see we've got a couple of fault things coming up. A lot of that stuff's just because it doesn't have front bar on it anymore. Parking sensors in the front bar are missing, and a bit of that kind of stuff. You can see the vehicle's done over 200,000 K, so it's an old example. It's a little bit tired, but it's been a good development tool. Okay, what we're going to do now, we're just going to come back, just turn that off. What we're going to do now is just show you what's involved in actually installing one of our ECU packages with the adaptor loom. First thing you need to do is disconnect and remove the factory ECU. This is a complete replacement. It's not a piggyback. Piggybacks generally have issues just because you've got two ECUs trying to control the car and neither one of them is doing the whole thing, so they both trying to fight it. Okay, here we have our ECU adapter loom. We have the factory connectors. There's nothing that you need to modify. All these connectors have a white mark that lines up with a white mark. Put those two into there. White mark to white mark. We're not going to bother about putting a lambda sensor in it just at the moment. We'll just sit that in there. So what we're going to do now, you can see the ECU is just living back in that spot there. I'm just going to jump in the car and we're just going to start again. So this is now running on the Motec ECU. You can see our Tacho still works. You can see we've still got the same fault codes we had, but we don't have any ABS errors. We don't have injection multiplexer error or anything like that coming up on the dash. So all that part of the car is still pretty happy. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're just going to stop this again. We're just going to jump out, we'll hook up the closed loop lambda, we'll show you how easy that is to do, and then we'll show you how we've got some kits that will let you put fuel pressure and will also let you put fuel composition, because one of the big wins with this whole system is you can now run flex fuel in your Megane. So let's put you back up here so you can watch what we do. Just going to remove this factory lambda sensor. The system has closed loop knob control already built in, reads the factory knob sensor. All this lets us do is we can have closed loop lambda control as well, so that's all back to the mix kit we asked for. It just uses a Bosch 4.9 sensor. They're relatively inexpensive. this is the lambda module we're using. Because this is our 130 package, not our 150 package, the ECU only has one CAN bus. So unfortunately we can't use the Motec lambda CAN module, which is very good, but we use this module from New Zealand where we worked with the developer, and basically it sends out exactly the same CAN message that the Motec LTC sends out. So as far as the ECU is concerned, it doesn't know any different. So we're just going to plug that in. Okay, just leave that a little bit loose for the moment. Just want to show you what we've got there. What we're going to do now is we're going to put a fuel sensor and a fuel pressure sensor into the car. These little kits we've made up, relatively simple to fit, relatively inexpensive. This will now give you fuel pressure and everything else. The other thing we've already done with this car is we've actually installed into it a combined oil pressure, oil temperature sensor in where the normal oil or low oil warning switch is. And we can actually also control that to come on, so we can preset a pressure and it will come on and trigger an alarm on the dash. So instead of the alarm just triggering as it does factory at about 5 psi, we can have it trigger at 30 psi, at 2000 revs, 40 psi, at 4000 revs, whatever parameters we want to put to it. This is our fuel pressure sensor, because the system has the capacity to adjust the injector duty cycle to compensate if you have a momentary fuel pressure surge. It's just a quick connect fitting, just slides down in there. Got our connector here, we'll just plug that in. Okay, this is a flex fuel sensor. We've already hooked the wiring in for it. Just going to let in there. Tuck this under here. Probably need to paddle quite a little bit of stuff off, but there you go, you kind of get the idea. We've just installed those quite quickly. Now we'll just go back in the car and show you what we have. So everything's working in the car now. You see we still have our speed limiter function. It works much the same as how the factory speed limiter does. It turns off and on through the same switches as all that stuff happens. You get the same display up on your dash. If I turn that off and I go to cruise, cruise works the same way as well. So we tried to integrate that so it's exactly the same as what it would have been. What we are going to show you over here now, and we'll just temporarily plug this in, but we also have a keypad option. So the keypad kind of sits down here relatively nicely. Now what we can do here actually going to be showing the real air temp signal, but obviously, or oil temp signal, but obviously it's got to be above 70 before it reads, because this system is pre-configured, that's how it works. You see all your brake pressure, everything else, your power numbers, they're all still working. So that part of it's all pretty good. The other thing it does do is it integrates with this, and it will actually read the throttle map, and it will give you an option so that you can tune the throttle map. The program comes default with a throttle map or a throttle translation table that kind of mimics what you've got here, but you can change that to suit whatever you want. The system also reads the gear shift alert, and it will change the RPM value depending on what you put in there. So at the moment we're having the gear shift alert come on 1000 RPM before we get to the RPM limit. We can change that, and the system will read that, and it will still drive the upshift light in the Tacho. We can also turn that on or off with the switch. We can also decide what engine speed limits we want that to be active for. The system also reads whatever mode we're in, whether we're in sport mode, whether we're in sport ESP off, or whether we're in normal mode. You can have different RPM limits set up for that. You can have different launch strategies set up for that as well. It really comes back to what you want to program into it, but there's just a whole heap of flexibility, and it just opens up a whole heap of development potential in the car, because these cars have been pretty ignored in the aftermarket world for what you can get for them, and there's a limit as to how far you can go with the factory ECU. You can see down here there's various lights that are on. It just depends what maps are on with the keypad, but the keypad interacts directly with the ECU. You just need to wire it in behind here. It just needs to be on the CAN bus on the OBD2 port. If you pick up 12 volt from the limiter switch and just a ground in there, then it will just turn on with the ignition and it will function like normal. You can program the high temperature alarm to come on or off at whatever level you want that to be. You can program the oil pressure alarm like we spoke about. You can also program the check engine lights, the solid check engine light and the flashing light. You can decide which warnings you want to have drive those lights or not. It's really up to you as to how you want to configure it. So what we're going to be doing over the next day, we'll probably release another video in about a week or so, and we'll just show you what you really need to do for flex fuel. So obviously you'll need to do something with the fuel pump, but we've got a kit available for that. We'll actually show you what we do to put an upgraded fuel pump into your fuel bucket, which is basically all you need, and that'll give you a bit more supply. The other thing we'd like to show you over here is we've got 3 sets of injectors. Now this injector at the top, this row, they're the standard injectors that come with the car. They're about 490 cc's a minute. It's going to get you to just over 300 horsepower at the engine, or 250 at the wheels on my dyno. Then you're getting to the point where you're starting to run out of injector capacity. If you're going to go E85, you're going to use 38% more fuel, so you need to have an injector that's got more volume. The next row is a 730cc injector. What I'd like to show you is it's the same architecture. This is a straight bolt-in. You don't have to modify the harness, you don't have to modify anything, you just have to take the fuel rail out, put the new injectors in. There's a drop-down box within the program. You tell it you've now changed injectors to these, and then off you go again. It's got the same spray pattern, so the injector where it sits in the manifold, there's no shielding, there's nothing like. It's exactly how Renault really wanted it to work. It's extended tip, split cone, everything's the same. These are a 730cc injector, so it's about another 50% of volume over the standard. But don't forget, if you're going to run E85, then you're using 38% of that, so you've really only got like another 10% of margin. What we've got here in the last row, these are 1050cc injectors. Same thing, same architecture, same everything else. They'll still deliver 1 microliter as a minimum volume, so it'll still idle perfectly on these on petrol, but you have a lot more scope with this injector now, with injection timing and with where you want to go. They're all exactly the same architecture, they're all a Bosch injector, and they're all relatively inexpensive. Like these injectors retail for $100 each, as do these. So you can basically have a pick an injector, probably half an hour to put them in the car, and then you're off and running again, and you can just go down the flex fuel path. It's not going to be a problem. The other thing that we have in this car that we will show you, because we're using ignition 4 module, we have 4 ignition outputs. So what we can do is we can drive the injectors individually. So if you're going to run a high boost level, and you see a lot of guys after they've had their cars tuned, they complain about a misfire around that 5,000 RPM mark. That's because these run a wasted spark injector, a wasted spark coil, sorry. We're going to do away with the wasted spark, and we're going to make them individual. That lets you easily get, 22 to 25 pounds of boost in the car without a misfire, without having to change the coils. There's one small wiring mod that has to happen. We basically pick up, if you look here, the top wire there and there, we splice into the power supply. We've already done that on this car, and we have a small plug just here that we plug in for power, and the rest of it just plugs into the car. So it's one small wiring mod, and you can basically have individual spark instead of the factory wasted spark system. You can see that the system's driving the fan. It drives the air conditioner just like normal. Basically tried to make the package so that everything works exactly the same as normal. The package has rolling launch control, it has a fixed speed launch control, it has the same factory launch control that the car comes with, the stationary thing. Basically we've just tried to make this so that it's a one-stop install that will let you enjoy your Megane a little bit more than the factory ECU limitations will. So it just lets you go a little bit further with the car. Anyway, thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and like I say, we'll have another video going up as to what's involved to put ethanol into the car. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye.